The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin is a children's book written and illustrated by Beatrix Potter and first published by Frederick Warren. And go. In August 1903, the story is about an impertinent red squirrel named Nutkin and his narrow escape from an owl called Old Brown. The book followed Potter's hugely successful The Tale of Peter Rabbit and was an instant hit. The now familiar end papers of the Peter Rabbit series were introduced in this book. The story focuses on Nutkin, a squirrel, and his family of squirrels. It's autumn and winter is coming soon, so Nutkin, his brother Twinkleberry, and their many cousins are planning on getting nuts. But they don't have enough time to collect nuts on their own, so they need to take a trip to Owl Island. This island is owned by an owl named Old Brown. If the owls allow them to gather nuts on his island, the squirrels will give the owl a gift. So the squirrels set off across the lake. They each made a little raft out of twigs and leaves to carry themselves and their nut sacks. They arrived safe and sound at the base of a big oak tree on the island. Old Brown sat in his treehouse watching them. Old Brown said to the squirrels, "You may gather nuts here tomorrow, but in return you shall give me something good." The squirrels agreed, and so they spent the day leaping and playing until sunset. They sailed home tired and happy, dreaming of the feast of nuts that awaited them. The next morning, they returned to the Oak Island. He gave Old Brown 3 dead mice they had brought with them, and he let them get nuts. But Nutkin danced about impertinently singing a silly riddle. Old Brown paid no attention to Nutkin, but permitted the squirrels to go about their work. But Nutkin did not help. The other squirrels ran and played while Nutkin skipped about singing, "I know a good thing. What's that, Nutkin? What's that, Nutkin? What's that?" They scolded him, but he would not listen. Instead, Nutkin sang louder, "I know a good thing. I know a good thing. What can it be? What can it be?" The other squirrels left him, and Nutkin wandered about the island, making himself as busy as he could. When they returned to the tree at evening, the others found that Old Brown was waiting for them. Nutkin stopped singing, and Old Brown asked for his gift. The squirrels presented the owl with a large mole they had brought with them, and he let them gather nuts for another day. Nutkin continued to be rude and tell riddles. He also didn't help gather nuts again. The next day, the squirrels all went fishing and caught 7 minnows, which they gave to Old Brown. Nutkin again said a riddle, unnerving Old Brown. On the 4th day, the squirrels gave Old Brown 6 beetles. Nutkin sang, "Old Brown a riddle again." Old Brown began to get annoyed. On the 5th day, the squirrels gave Old Brown lots of sweet honey, which they had stolen from the hive of bumblebees. However, again, Nutkin taunted Old Brown with a riddle. Nutkin didn't gather nuts either, chase butterflies or bowled with an apple, but mostly he played with the string that tied up Old Brown's house. Even so, when the squirrels presented Old Brown with the honey, he seemed pleased, and though he told Nutkin sharply to stop teasing, he did not seem to mind the squirrels' riddles so much. However, the next day, the 6th day, Nutkin and the other squirrels went to the neighboring farm and stole a newly laid egg from the poultry yard. They carried it carefully to the Oak Island and gave it to Old Brown, though very pleased with the squirrels for all their presents. Old Brown was very annoyed with Nutkin, who continued to taunt him with riddles. Nutkin had not done any work since the first day, and he now skipped about with a stick like a flail, singing "What goes up and down in the field? What goes up and down in the field?" Old Brown had had enough. He put his talons into Nutkin and pulled him up into the treehouse, disturbing the other squirrels, who chattered loudly and swam away. Old Brown looked at Nutkin angrily and said, "Now I really must skin you," and he began to pull his claws through the soft, downy skin of Nutkin's neck. Nutkin screamed, struggling with all his might. With one final effort, he wriggled free and escaped out from the top of the tree. As Nutkin scampered along the branches, he felt something flutter behind him. It was his tail, which had been separated from him in the struggle. It dropped into the long grass below. Nutkin peeped over the edge of the tree, but it was too far for him to reach. Then he saw that Old Brown had got it and was dangling it out of his window. Nutkin asked for it back, but the owl only laughed and ate some of his tail. Nutkin vowed then that he would never like riddles again, and if anyone ever asked him a riddle, he would throw sticks and start shouting. Nutkin was very upset at losing his bushy tail. He lived the rest of his life in fear of owls. But Nutkin still loved to tease and play tricks, especially on his cousin Mossy. Every day he played jokes on Mossy, hiding his food or tripping him up. and whenever he met a stranger, he challenged them to a wrestling match. Sometimes he boasted, if it wasn't for my tail, I should be invincible. And that's the story of Squirrel Nutkin. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe so you won't miss out on any of our stories. Also check the description below for our social media channels. We would love to see you there. Till next time.